It was just another quiet Sunday afternoon. The sky was dull, the air still, and the streets almost empty. Emily, a recently single woman in her early 30s, had just pulled up to her apartment complex after doing her weekly grocery shopping. Struggling with bags that kept slipping from her hands, she didn't even notice the man walking up behind her until he gently said, "Need a hand?" Startled at first, she looked up and met the warm, sincere eyes of a man she had never seen around before. He introduced himself as Ryan, tall, calm, a little scruffy, and with a kind presence that didn't feel threatening at all. Something about his tone felt familiar, almost comforting, like she'd met him in another lifetime. She hesitated, unsure whether to accept the offer or politely decline, but before she could speak, one of the bags tore open and oranges rolled onto the sidewalk. Without missing a beat, Ryan rushed to pick them up, brushing off the dirt and handing them back to her with a soft laugh. "Now it looks like I have to help," he joked. Emily smiled. She hadn't smiled like that in weeks. Maybe even months. As they walked toward her door, she learned he was visiting his sister who lived just a few doors down. They exchanged small talk, nothing deep, just enough to feel natural. Once inside her apartment, as he helped place the groceries on the kitchen counter, the mood grew a little quieter. There was something peaceful in the air, a stillness that neither of them could quite explain. She offered him a glass of water. He accepted. Minutes turned into an hour. The conversation, though simple, flowed effortlessly. They talked about books, music, childhood memories. He wasn't flirting, and neither was she. It was just connection. Something rare. Something real. Emily had forgotten what that felt like. When rain began pouring outside, Ryan checked his phone and sighed, "Guess I'll wait it out a little." She nodded, secretly glad he was staying a bit longer. Later, as they sat on her old sofa watching the storm crash against the windows, Emily found herself opening up in ways she didn't expect. And Ryan listened, not the way people pretend to, but the kind that makes you feel seen. Time passed unnoticed. The sound of thunder masked the silence between them. When the lights flickered and the power cut out, they both laughed. He lit a candle from the counter, and they sat in the soft glow, shadows dancing around them. It was supposed to be nothing, a simple act of kindness from a stranger. Just someone helping with groceries. But as night fell and the rain didn't let up, something changed. Emily felt it, and so did Ryan. They didn't say it out loud, but it was there. A moment that didn't feel like coincidence. As midnight approached, she made a decision she hadn't planned on, and it left her questioning everything she thought she knew about timing, trust, and unexpected connections. But what really happened that night, and why did Ryan never leave? Emily wasn't someone who usually let strangers into her home, let alone stay past midnight. But something about Ryan felt different. Not safe in a predictable way, but familiar, like a memory trying to surface. As the storm raged on outside, she found herself studying his face when he wasn't looking. The way his eyes wandered the room, the way his fingers tapped the side of his glass, like he was waiting for something, maybe even hiding something. She tried to brush off the feeling. It had been a tough few months. After her breakup with Mark, she'd thrown herself into routine, work, errands, sleep. Nothing unexpected, nothing messy. Until tonight. Ryan seemed too thoughtful, too present for someone she'd just met. And there was something in the way he mentioned knowing the building. "I visited my sister once before," he had said. But when she asked which apartment, he paused, almost too long, before answering. 5C, he said. That was the one right above hers. Emily glanced up toward her ceiling, as if expecting to hear footsteps. But she remembered something. 5C had been empty for weeks. The last tenant moved out after a divorce. The place had been dark every night since. She kept quiet, unsure whether to trust her memory or confront him about it. Ryan didn't seem to notice her shift in energy. He stood up, offered to check the circuit breaker in case the power flickered back on. She nodded, watching him walk into the hallway like he'd been there before. Her heart beat a little faster. Who was this man really? Why did he stay? And why was it starting to feel like he hadn't just randomly shown up that day, but that he had been waiting for this moment all along? Emily sat motionless on the couch, her mind running faster than her heartbeat. Something wasn't right. The way Ryan had walked down the hallway, confident and sure of each step, didn't match his story. And now that she thought about it, when he said he visited his sister, he didn't mention a name. Most people drop names naturally, but he hadn't. It was like his answers were carefully measured, almost rehearsed. Meanwhile, Ryan opened the small panel near the kitchen where the circuit breakers were, pretending to inspect it. But his eyes weren't on the switches, they were glancing around, observing details. He noticed the photos on the wall. Emily with friends. Emily with her dog. And one that made his expression change for just a second, Emily and Mark. He stared at that one longer than he should have. Then quickly looked away when he heard her footsteps behind him. "I don't think anything's tripped," he said, forcing a casual tone. She nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Her mind was still on the empty apartment above and the way Ryan had looked at that photo. Something about it all made her stomach tighten. She walked back toward the kitchen, pretending to tidy up while she watched him from the corner of her eye. Just then, her phone buzzed. A message from her neighbor upstairs. "Hey, did you hear something in your hallway earlier? I thought I saw someone come out of your door around sunset." Emily froze. She hadn't left her apartment after coming in with the groceries. Now questions poured in. Who saw Ryan first, her or someone else? And why was he really there? A simple favor had turned into something far more tangled. But if this wasn't chance, then what had she unknowingly walked into? Emily's hands trembled slightly as she slipped her phone back onto the kitchen counter, pretending nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. The message from her neighbor echoed in her head like an alarm. Someone came out of your door around sunset. She hadn't let anyone in until after dark. So how long had Ryan really been near her apartment? She turned to face him, trying to mask the anxiety in her voice. "You said you got here just before it started raining, right?" Ryan looked up from the sofa, meeting her gaze with that same calm expression. "Yeah, maybe 10 minutes before." "Why?" She shrugged. "Just curious. It started pouring earlier than I thought." Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, watching for any flicker in his response. But he gave her none. That was even more unsettling. The candlelight now felt less warm, more like a warning glow. Shadows stretched across the walls, making the room feel smaller, tighter. The silence between them grew heavy. Emily sat down again, careful to keep her phone nearby. She opened her messages under the table and started typing one-handed to her friend Clara. "Call me in 2 minutes. Pretend it's urgent." She pressed send. Across the room, Ryan leaned forward. "You seem nervous. Everything okay?" Emily forced a tight smile. "Just tired. Long day." He nodded but didn't look convinced. Instead, he stood up slowly and glanced toward her front door. "I think the rain's letting up. I should probably get going soon." But he didn't move. And neither did she. The silence wrapped around them like fog, and just as Emily's phone began to ring, Ryan's eyes locked onto it. That's when his expression finally shifted. Just a little. But enough for her to know. He wasn't planning to leave. Emily's phone buzzed louder than expected in the tense silence. She reached for it, heart racing, trying to act natural. "Sorry, it's my friend," she said, lifting it to her ear. But as she answered, Ryan took a slow step forward, not toward the door, but toward her. Her friend Clara was already speaking fast, sticking to the plan, playing her part. "Emily, listen, it's an emergency, I need you to come over. Now. It's serious." Emily kept her voice steady. Yeah, I'll come. Just give me 5 minutes. She ended the call, avoiding Ryan's eyes. I have to go. A friend needs me. But Ryan didn't move aside. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, almost as if he were studying her. You sure you're okay? He asked again, more quietly this time. Something in his voice sent a chill down her spine. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't loud. That's what made it scarier. He was calm, too calm, like someone used to hiding intention behind gentle words. Her instincts screamed to get out, but she couldn't show fear. Yeah. I should really go, she said, walking toward the door with deliberate confidence. Just as her hand reached the doorknob, Ryan spoke again. Before you go, do you still talk to Mark? She froze. He hadn't said that name all night. Her ex. The man she hadn't spoken to in months. Slowly, she turned. Why would you ask that? Ryan took something from his jacket pocket and held it up. A small, scratched keychain. Emily recognized it instantly. Mark's. The one he'd lost months ago. Her breath caught. Where did you get that? Ryan looked at it, then at her. I think you already know. Now the room felt completely still. Her thoughts spun. Was Ryan connected to Mark? Had he been watching her? Was this just a coincidence, or had this entire night been planned? Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside her apartment, the storm was only just beginning. He had come to her door looking like a stranger doing a favor. But now, it felt like every moment since then had been part of something much bigger. Something she hadn't seen coming. Emily's mouth went dry. Her eyes stayed locked on the keychain in Ryan's hand, and her voice barely came out. You said you didn't know Mark. I didn't say anything about him at all, Ryan replied, calm as ever. You just assumed. She stepped back slowly, heart pounding, trying to figure out what was happening. Ryan didn't move any closer, but his expression had changed. Gone was the friendly stranger. In his place stood someone who had been waiting for this moment all along. You were supposed to be with him that night, he said quietly. But you cancelled. He drove alone. And then it hit her. That night 6 months ago. The night Mark had the accident. He'd been on the way to dinner with a friend, Ryan. Emily's legs weakened. You're his friend from the car. Ryan nodded. I survived. Barely. He didn't. Her hand instinctively reached for the doorknob behind her, but Ryan raised his hands. I'm not here to hurt you, Emily. I just needed to see what kind of person you really are. If you even cared what happened. Tears welled in her eyes, confusion crashing into guilt. I did care. I still do. I didn't know. I never knew who you were. He looked away for a second, swallowing hard. I lost everything that night. And I blamed you because Mark talked about you the whole drive. He still wanted to fix things. Emily didn't know what to say. The storm outside had passed, but inside, the emotions were flooding over. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, Ryan dropped the keychain on her table and walked to the door. I just needed to see you face to face. To let it go. She opened the door slowly. Ryan stepped out into the damp hallway. But just before he turned the corner, he stopped. By the way, that upstairs apartment? 5C? Still empty. But I wasn't lying, I've been here before. Emily stared as he disappeared down the stairs. The door shut behind him with a soft click. And suddenly, she remembered. Months ago, after Mark's death, she'd heard someone in the hallway every night at the same time. Footsteps. Always stopping outside her door. He hadn't just shown up tonight. He'd been watching her grieve, all along. Emily stood in the middle of her apartment long after Ryan had gone, the silence pressing in around her. The keychain still sat on the table, small and worn, but now carrying so much weight. Everything made sense now, the quiet footsteps at night, the strange feeling of being watched, the way Ryan seemed to already know more than he let on. He hadn't just come to help with groceries. He had come to face his own pain. And maybe, in a strange way, to give her the chance to face hers too. She sat down slowly, her eyes drifting toward the photo of her and Mark. Guilt had lived quietly in her for months, tucked beneath busy days and forced smiles. She had always wondered if that cancelled dinner had mattered. Now she knew it did. But Ryan hadn't come for revenge. He came looking for closure, and in doing so, gave her some too. That night changed something in Emily. She didn't call Clara back. She didn't tell her neighbor what had happened. It felt like something meant only for her to carry. A private moment that closed a painful chapter without any more noise. The next morning, she stepped out of her apartment and glanced at 5C. Still empty. But it no longer felt like a mystery, just another locked door with its own story. She walked out into the sunlight, the air fresh after the storm, and felt something inside her shift. Not everything had been healed, but something had been released. A weight she didn't realize she was still holding had finally been put down. Sometimes, the people who enter our lives unexpectedly aren't there to stay, they're just passing through, carrying pieces of the past we're afraid to face. But even a short encounter can change everything. Ryan showed up as a stranger with a quiet voice and a simple gesture. But he left behind something deeper, a reminder that healing doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes, it walks in with the rain, sits quietly in the dark, and then leaves, just when you're ready to face the light again. He was just helping with groceries, but he stayed long enough to help her find the truth she'd been avoiding. And in that, his visit was never about the groceries at all, it was about letting go. 55.